And it's a thrill to be here for both of us. As Will mentioned, many people think that our show, Billions, which I have to say is co-created by my partner and showrun by my partner, David Levine. It's not all me. I have a lot of friends who are restaurant people, chefs, front of house people, and I'm often asked about it when people interview me about the show. And I often give some answer that's, like they say, why? What's your kinship with these people? And I say something about the ineffable nature of what we both do. I say something about being show people. But the truth is, people in your business and in my business are always at the edge of failure at every second. We are constantly trying to figure out if we should quit with dignity or find a way to move ahead. And I was at one of these moments in my life when I first came into contact with Seth's work. This is before he became one of my closest friends and confidants. And what happened was I had co-written a movie that bombed. I don't mean it just was like a one-star piece. I mean, it was like the Guy Fieri review, basically, of a movie, and I knew it sucked too, so I couldn't even say, like, I hate you guys for writing how shitty it is. It sucked. And so there was this movie that was bad, and then my partner and I were supposed to work with Martin Scorsese, a lifelong dream, and we met him, and we were hired, and within a week, we were fired, and it was in Variety magazine and everywhere that we were fired. And I had this agent then, and this guy had really been trained up and had to be an agent. When you called him, he never said the word yes. He would always say correct with like an exclamation point. And like, for instance, if you would call and you would say, hey, can you get us a meeting at Warner Brothers? He would call an hour later and say, guess who has a meeting at Warner Brothers? And you would say, me, and he would say, correct. And but in this moment of failure, and I'm making light of it for a second, so the movie crashed and burned. We were fired very publicly by the most important living director in the world. And suddenly we couldn't get the agent on the telephone, and no, we couldn't email him and he wouldn't return. Finally, he calls us and he says, I just want to tell you guys how bad this is. And I said, really? And he said, yes. You are officially unhireable. And I said, you mean nobody will hire us to write a movie or a TV show? And he said, correct. And this was really bad. And the truth of it is, I was scared for my life. I had a family. Amy and I had 2 kids. I didn't know if I'd had a 20-year career that I figured, as people in both of our businesses, that I had a legacy business. I'd done 20 years. We wrote Rounders and Ocean's 13, and I figured this would go on. And here was this moment where I was told nobody would hire us. And I really didn't know if I should quit or carry on or what to do. And I read a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. And The Dip is all about the idea that if you quit, you can quit with dignity and there's no shame in it. But if you think you can succeed and find a way to carry on, understand you may think you're in a cul-de-sac that's turning you around when in fact you might just be in a dip. And if you just press on, you might find a way. And what David, my partner, and I realized was if we just wrote the, forget about being hired. Find your own way. Don't let them decide. You decide. And I remember I would listen to his audiobook over and over again as I would walk through Central Park to my office, which was on the east side, and just start working on something. And that thing we started writing was Billions. And we started writing it, and every day as I would walk across the park, I would feel a little better. And it took about a year for Billions to happen, but within that time, he and I met. And we began to have these conversations on my podcast and in person. And Seth's the wisest person I know, and really has the deepest understanding of these questions that we all face. So here's where I want to start with you,
That was
Seth.
beautiful. Thank you.
Well, you know how I feel. And
Well, I need to say I've learned more from you than you have from me.
All right, we're done. Thanks, everybody. This was great. Excellent time. Thank you, Seth.
I just got to say one more thing before we start, because there's been a lot of discussion about this today, and I know it's been a long day, and you're all still here, which I'm thrilled by. I am Simon Sinek's worst enemy. Someone wanted to know. There you go.
So when Will asked us to do this, he said he'd been listening to all these podcasts we'd done together, and he wanted us to kind of recreate that. And the way we do it is I basically have a couple bullet points. I ask you questions. We argue about it. Mostly I listen to you. But I want to start with this question of loyalty.
Right.
Because I think all of us wrestle with, growing up watching The Godfather, we all understand the value of loyalty. But we think about it in a couple different ways, right? We're trying to engender loyalty in our customers. But we also, I think customers want to understand, and I think about this with the relationship I have with my viewers, and you think about it with the relationship you have with your readers. Seth's written 19 #1 bestsellers and has the most popular blog written by one person in the world. So we want this loyalty to go both ways. And how do you change it from just being a word and a concept to being something you can implement on both sides?
Right. And mostly it's a word. And if it's not a word, we should be able to measure it. We should figure out what it's worth. And you work for organizations that have done the math and figured out a restaurant with loyal customers dramatically outperforms one that doesn't have loyal customers, by far. And so they invent loyalty programs. But if there's a loyalty program, then there really isn't loyalty. Because what you're really doing is trying to buy it. So the example is, if we're going to measure it, how much extra would you pay to travel on American instead of Delta? Now, the answer from any reasonable, rational person is nothing. For a nickel, I would switch airlines because they're the same. Oh, but I have frequent flyer miles on this one. So basically what we're doing is we're paying you to do this thing that looks like loyalty, but the minute we stop paying you, you're going to stop doing it. So I was loyal for 20 years to a credit card company, and I wasn't loyal because I had a lot of points with them. It's a different thing. And the other thing, the real loyalty, is about identity, which is not that they're going to give me a prize because I go back. It's because I define myself as the kind of person who is loyal to something like that. Now, you may have heard of Gaudi's cathedral in Barcelona. And he died in the 1920s with only one wall of it finished. The two architects who worked under him stayed for 40 more years out of loyalty. Loyalty to who? He's dead, right? He didn't know that they stayed. He's dead.
Well, maybe Will's medium told him that's possible.
Right?
So they knew that way.
So, but to finish the rant, they were being loyal to themselves. They defined themselves as the kind of people who would continue showing up because they could live with themselves better. So when we build an institution that stands for something, Gabrielle's restaurant stands for something, the no tipping policy at Union Square stands for something, then I get to define myself as the kind of person who, with 20 choices, open table, sort by anything, right? I'll go to this one. But part of the mythology is that we believe that they care about us. And the reason that I don't use that credit card company anymore after millions of dollars spent through my corporate account for 20 years is because when push came to shove 2 months ago and they had the chance to say, I see you and we're sorry, they had a bureaucrat instead who couldn't do it. And every time I used the card, I felt stupid from then on because I felt like I'd been rubed for 20 years into imagining that, the fact that I'd been a member since whenever mattered for something. So I'm gone, right? Because it was causing me to not like myself. So our job as people who want to make an institution that matters is not to comp people because they're coming back. That's a loyalty program, right? That you could buy somebody coming back.
Definitely comp me if I come in, but he's right. Yeah. He's totally.
Always comp
He's completely
Brian.
right about it.
Always comp Brian because you could buy his loyalty for
he's right.
For an artichoke would buy, right?
Yes.
But
well, if Gabrielle makes the artichoke,
exactly,
for sure, no doubt about it.
So what is it then? What is it is identity. I see you, Saubana. I see your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents. I see your fears and your desires and your beliefs, and you are welcome here And every time you don't come here, that's okay, but you won't have that same feeling because people like us, this is where we hang out. And that is the hospitality part. The food part is a placebo. The other part, that's why we're spending the money. We could get the food at home for a quarter of the price. We're going to the place because you made us feel like better versions of ourselves.
How do you think someone like, since Danny seems to be who we're all talking, hi Danny, how do you think Danny and Will are able to create? What do you think it is that what have you noticed that they do that expresses, because you're right, people become loyal to these institutions, and it's because they're seen. It's because these places seem to say, we're loyal to you also. How do you think that works? What's actually going on so that we can all learn how to do that?
The shortcut, which is like tweet at 2 p.m. because you'll get more followers. The shortcut is hire kind people. I don't buy that.
Right, I was going to say,
I think that's like a really good way to get people to say they got something out of the book. I don't buy that. I think it's about leadership instead of management, because Danny's too self-effacing to take credit for this. Management is getting people to do what they did yesterday, but faster and cheaper, right? Management requires authority. Management says, I am the boss, you need to do this if you want to stay here. Leadership involves enrollment and difficult decisions. Enrollment, because the people you hire want to go where you're going, and the difficult decisions of saying, this person, high performer, I got to fire them because they're not on the same bus I want this place to be. The restaurant's really slow at 10 to 11. We're still going to stay open, even though it's going to cost me money. Leadership is when we get right back to the dip, which is, what does it mean to stick with something even when it's hard? Because if you're not willing to do that, you probably should quit, because you're just going to be mediocre.
Yes, I agree with all of that. How do we train it? How do we have the conversations? Because so much of this is words, right?
Yeah.
And it's relatively easy to sort of stand at a place like this and go have a drink afterwards and talk about the new way we're all going to be custodian kind of leaders. It's really hard in practice because of the time pressure.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the monetary pressure. You know, I think about the foundational story of Will's that I love, about the hot dog, which is that he heard this family talking at the beginning of EMP and cut the hot dog up and went out in the street because they said the only thing they didn't have in New York was a hot dog, and he went out and he got it. Easy for the guy managing the joint to do that.
Right.
Really hard in a 4-star restaurant when the chef is somebody who's world-renowned and the people coming are here for a certain experience to take that risk. How do we shape a conversation that tells that story?
Okay, so I'm going to hit the imaginary button, and you're going to watch the Lucille Ball assembly line skit you've seen where they're making the truffles and it's going faster and faster and faster, right? I have had that in the presentation that I use with my slides for the last 12 years. That assembly line is what most Western leaders think management and business is. How do we make this system go faster? That the easiest way to make your restaurant make more money is have more tops, process more orders, fill the real estate better. But if you ask people 6 months later, what did they remember about the restaurant, they will never say they were fast, right? Nor will they say that every operational thing was at 11. That's not what they're going to say. That what it means to do this work is not to make the assembly line go faster, but if we think about, Askinosie chocolate, or we think about Rogue chocolate. These chocolate companies don't make that many chocolate bars, but there's a line out the door and people pay twice as much.
Why?
Because it's magic, it's special, and they're not promising Six Sigma perfection, they're promising to care. And the problem, magicians have discovered that YouTube is a real buzzkill. Because if you watch it enough times on YouTube, you're not amazed anymore. Well, if you're going to keep promising people the hot dog trick, you're going to run out of magic to do for them. Instead, the simple trick is, we're going to breathe the same air you're breathing. We're going to be in the same room with you. And we're going to realize your problem isn't our problem. Your beliefs aren't our beliefs. And that's okay. And if we can't do that, we can't engage.
So how do we put it in practice? I want to chase it once more. So the other day I was somewhere in it wasn't a fast food place, but it was something like that. And the person, I remember it was at the airport, and we were in the line to pay a toll to leave the airport, and the person in the booth, it was taking a while, and I was like, how are you? How's your night going? What's happening?
Right.
I was trying to connect, right? Make them know that they were seen. They had no interest in it, and I made an offhanded comment to someone in the car about, like, when we drove away, like, oh, that's a shame that there was no ability to connect. And that person said, well, I've been in those jobs, and let me tell you how hard it is to actually
It's management's fault.
Yeah, but so the question is practically.
Right? Well, practically. So here's the hard
Practically,
decision.
how does management,
So
teach people to see you?
2 blocks from here is a place that sells Mediterranean hummus, shawarma, right? You're not allowed to talk to the person. There's a seamless screen, and you have to go shh, 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 and then they will give you their food. They have paved the road to Chapter 11. Because as soon as that's the transaction, there's someone, Amazon will do it for me better than that, right?
Even if you love hummus like nobody.
Right, but making good hummus is a mechanical process. Being a human, looking me in the eye and saying, oh, that's not on the menu, but we're going to do that. Someone who is well-led, who is an entry-level worker, wants to be human, and management isn't letting them be. So let me do the last hospitality story about this. So it's 2 weeks ago. I always get up stupid early or when I'm working on the road. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm at the hotel. I don't know what city I'm in. And I dial 0 to say, where is the gym? Because I don't want to wander around the hotel. The person answers the phone. I ask the question, and I hear clackety, clackety, clack. And then they read me back a paragraph that was pre-written about where the gym was in this hotel. Now, part of me says, oh, at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's a chain. They're going to have 20 hotels all go to the same call center. That's not stupid. But then they made the decision, we don't trust our people enough to have them actually narrate how to get to the gym. The real goal here is once you put in voice recognition, that person doesn't need to have a job. Because I say, where's the gym? And the computer just reads itself. This is the wrong road if you want to be in the hospitality business. This place is going to go out of business because every step will be mechanized until there's nothing left. And we're just like in that Wall-E movie, right?
Right.
So what we've got to do is say, what are the hard things that other restaurants can't afford to do? What is the hard way to lead and manage my toll takers so that when someone shows, I have spent the extra money to give every toll taker 15 extra seconds, right? That's all, 15 seconds. And encourage them, not force them, encourage them through training and cajoling to be a human, because that's who they want to be anyway. And that's possible.
How?
Do the hard thing, that's all. It's impossible to write billions, but you do because you sweat it harder than anybody. It's just hard. That's all I'm saying. There's no shortcut.
Yes, it's hard, but you think it's worth it to do. Because
well, why else show up to do that? You guys could all make more money on Wall Street. Go do that.
Well, this leads to this question we were talking about earlier, which is the question of what hard work, working long, because this is another kinship I feel with all of you, which is, as you know, TV and movie hours are insane, and the only hours that are anything like it are restaurant hours, right? I have 18-hour days. Our regular day is 13 and a half to 14 and a half hours. That's our normal shooting day, and then I'm editing afterwards, right? And people are all the time telling you, I think a couple people said it today, work hard and work smart, or forget working long, work smart. How do you figure out what that means? How does the regular person figure out what that means? And I would take it further, because it's how do we not work in a mechanized, robotic manner, right? It's like the server comes over to your table, you've had a crazy sort of kind of day, and you just want to know what's good. And you say, hey, can you just tell me what's good? And then, you're in some cool downtown place I won't name that Pete gave a bunch of stars to, and the waiter says, well, Chef grew up in where? And you go, no, come on, what's good? And they go, when Chef's father took them duck hunting, and you're like, listen, I just want to fucking know what's good, and it's because And so what started as a magical, and this is, I got to say, Will, this is your genius, dude, is the way that you found a way to have every person take ownership of that experience with the guest. But I think it's a really hard trick. And so how do we learn, and I don't want to just leave everybody with it's hard.
Right, of course not.
So,
we have 9 minutes.
Hey guys, it's tough. We'll see you next time.
We got 9 whole minutes. 9 minutes left.
So what I want to do instead is have you talk about it, because you're great at this, man. I've watched you interact with all sorts of people. How do we give people that language and then teach them there are people who are coming here to hear about Chef, and there are people who just want to know what's good. How do you start to have that?
Well, I'm going to challenge the last premise with this. 4 words that change everything. It's not for you.
Sure.
Right? Oh, you want sushi to go from us? Sorry, not for you. You want a California roll from no. Sorry, you're not even welcome here. That's not what we do.
Right.
Right? As soon as you can say it's not for you, and backstage we were talking about the original Momofuku, and I'm a vegetarian, and the family and I used to go the first 6 months on Saturdays, sit at the grill, and at the last move, when they were going to make the Brussels sprouts, each time I would say, would you leave the bacon off? It saves you money, and I don't eat bacon. And they would just make it for me. And once they found their momentum, the guy at the grill turned and said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It's not for you.
My favorite restaurant of all time is Momofuku. Dave,
don't come back.
I'm here.
And I got to tell you, I was thrilled for them. When they said, don't come back, a regular Saturday 11 a.m. customer, don't come back. Yes, that's exactly the right thing to say. Please, don't come back. There's a place 2 doors down that would love your business. We don't do that here. And when someone comes in and wants the mechanized, cheaper one, you say, no, this is a place where every time you sit down, we're going to tell you about Chef's father and the duck hunting. That's what we do here. You can't go to Hamilton and say, could you guys do that song from Singing in the Rain? That doesn't, it's not one of the things they do.
But if you're already sitting there, like you tell that story now, but how did you feel that day?
Well, I'm a professional, so I felt great for them because it's what I write about, right?
Yeah.
But
it's a rarefied space where you can,
you
I'm going
can't
to
have it
challenge
both
this
ways.
part. Let me challenge this part.
You cannot have
of
it both ways.
It's a rarefied place that can get away with sending you.
So become a rarefied place, please. That's the entire purpose of today.
That's right. Or quit.
Exactly.
Quit or become a rarefied place.
So let me.
I hope you all enjoyed the careers.
No, let me explain. I got to speak up here, all right?
Yes.
The punchline of the dip, so you don't have to spend the $7 on the book.
You should. It's really a
The punchline of the dip is really simple. You're going on a date, and you say to your friend, great news. I got us into the 8th best barbecue restaurant in town. No one is happy about that. So what we can do in the world of sort is we sort and we go to the one that's the first. You need knee surgery? Well, you get the guy in Yonkers who's the best knee surgeon. You go to the #1 surgeon. Why would you go to the #6 surgeon?
I've been trying to convince him to go to a New York City doctor for so long. And he just won't.
Knee surgery turns out is a placebo. I learned it too late. Anyway, what are you going to be #1 at? Now, you could say we're the #1 slice place within 2 blocks of the corner of 8th Avenue and 15th Street. That's a totally legit thing to be, because within that circle of New York City, you can make a living. Or you can say, we're the best romantic restaurant of this sort. So when you get a call that says, can we have a 5-top? We got a 4-year-old. You say, I'm sorry, it's not for you. I'm going to transfer you to Union Square Cafe. And you just send them over there, right? So the point is, you want to be the best in the world at something. And if you don't care about the actual place you work right now, you personally want to be the best in the world at something. What does that mean? It means if you're a sommelier, well, maybe you want to get one of those awards or something, but maybe you want to be the sommelier for a certain kind of table that gets them to have an experience with wine that they never had before. What would it mean to be the best in the world at that, in this world, whatever world you want to define? And the magic of restaurants today is this. Every single person who goes into a restaurant for dinner had lunch. And if your restaurant is closed, they will have dinner somewhere else. We do not have a food shortage for the kind of people who go to restaurants in New York, right? So that's not your job, is not to bring them food. Your job is to be the best in the world at making a change in that moment for that person so that they will want to come back. If that's really your job, all these questions answer themselves.
This leads to two things I want to mention. You're exactly right. Two things. One, like my favorite old Mad Magazine cartoon, and I don't know if you ever saw it. It's the back of Mad Magazine. It was in the 70s. Yeah, the fold out, but it was the back page, and it was a New York City block, and there were 4 pizzerias. And the first one said, best pizza in the city, and it had a couple people in front of it. And the next one said, best pizza in the world, and it had just a couple more. And the third one said, best pizza in the universe, and it had a couple. And then there was this giant line by the fourth one, which just said, best pizza on the block. And it was, it was just, I felt like exactly what you were saying. With our remaining moments, I want to talk about, because many of the people in this room, they're in restaurants, and the thing they can't control is the food, ostensibly what people come for, even though I understand all the reasons you say that they don't. And lately, I had Jocko Willink, who I admire and love, the ex-Navy SEAL, a brilliant person, and I was reading his book, his latest book, and in it, he talks about the things you can't control you have to let go of. But unfortunately, if you're the manager of a restaurant, even though you can't control the food, or if you're the maitre d', even if you can't control the food, you're responsible for it to your guests. And so how do we manage this question of how do we take responsibility for that which we can't control without letting that which we can't control destroy us? It's an easy one for the last 3 minutes.
So there's a huge difference between authority and responsibility. Authority is given, responsibility is taken, and wherever you work, they will let you take an unlimited amount of responsibility. They're probably not going to give you authority. And so the question is, in the interaction that you have chosen to have with the person who is spending many, many dollars, what are they looking for you to do? Are they looking for you to personally cook the food? Of course not. Are they looking for you to take responsibility for what's about to happen? Of course they are. That if you turn to them, roll your eyes and say, well, I didn't cook it. That's not what they paid for. Otherwise, we could just go to an automat, put the money in and take the food out. We are asking you, the intermediary, to create an environment where we feel seen. And if that means that I think the food is too salty, and you're going to get yelled at if you have to tell the chef the food is too salty, I'm not asking for you to ask me to help you negotiate with the chef. I'm just saying, I don't like salty food, and I'm paying you to make it so the food isn't salty. So your job is to go into the kitchen and make up a story that's not true about how that I have high blood pressure, and that my doctor has written a note that if there's salt on the food, I'm going to die. Right? I don't care. I just want you to see me. Your problems in the kitchen are not my problems. And if you can do that, you're going to do what every great actor has ever done. When the sound guy, fell asleep and made a mistake, it's okay, because the actor engages with the audience, and they both know the actor's not in charge of the sound, but the actor's doing something about the fact that in this moment, we're on stage, you're in the audience, we're together. And it's hard to do that day in and day out. It's called emotional labor, because we're really lucky. We don't have to do physical labor outside digging a trench every day. We don't have to deal with malaria. We have to do emotional labor, showing up to do something we don't feel like in the moment. Because if you're doing something you feel like all the time, it's a hobby, and I am thrilled you get to do your hobby. But if you're going to be a professional, it means I don't care whether you feel like it or not. Just like when I had my knee surgery, it doesn't matter that you didn't feel like doing knee surgery today. You said you were going to do knee surgery. Do great knee surgery, because that's what I hired you to do.
Yes. Lastly, the last thing I want to say is I want to speak up for a charity called the New York Food Bank. I go out to dinner a lot in New York. I mean, from now on, you guys are going to comp me, which will be great. But before that, sometimes I would pay. And what I decided to do was every few meals, I give whatever the cost of that expensive New York City meal was to the New York City Food Bank. And I encourage you to do it, or to tell your best customers. It's a selfish act on my part. It just makes me feel great and never guilty about going out to eat. And the New York City Food Bank is the pantry that feeds basically they give the food to every single other food bank in the city. So check it out. Seth, I love you. You're a genius. Thanks for doing this. Nice talking.
Go make a record.